Hello dear listeners, today we invite you to continue listening to the story The Little Wife of the Evil General by author Nguyen Ngoc Tran K. Genre, Romance, Sex. Chapter 21. Deep Moc Van returns. The 2 days he left, her life passed very peacefully. She didn't leave the house for 2 days, and he didn't bother her. But she still had no inspiration to design any products. He would come home tonight. She was a little looking forward to it. The whole meal she kept waiting outside the door. The housekeeper said with a smile, "Don't look anymore. Young master won't be back until 11 o'clock. Moc Nhien's cheeks turned red. She put down her chopsticks. "I didn't say I was waiting for him." Then she ran up to her room. The butler smiled and shook his head. Moc Nhien went up to the balcony to stand for a while, then went downstairs to wait for him. She watches TV to kill time. At 11 o'clock, the villa gate opened, a Lamborghini parked in front of the gate, and he and a woman entered. Moc Nhien ran to the front door to wait for him. But when he entered, "Older sister?" She called Moc Van's name. She was walking behind him. Moc Van had become too skinny recently. Moc Van looked at Thien Lanh with teary eyes. "Lan, I want to go to my room to rest." His eyes never stopped on her. He hugged Moc Van's shoulders. "Okay, let's go to the room to rest." The butler looked at them and shook his head. Not very peaceful days were about to happen. Thien Lanh took Moc Van to his room. This time it was a coincidence. When he was getting in the car to go to the airport to return to tea, a girl in tattered clothes bumped into his car and fainted. They had little money and left, but unexpectedly that girl was Moc Van. He happily bought clothes for her and brought her back here. "Can I sleep here?" "But where will Moc Nhien sleep? After all, she is my wife." Thien Lanh hugged her. "Don't worry, I've never considered her my wife. I won't let her harm you again." "Yes." She obediently leaned against his chest, her eyes becoming cunning. The story is that a month ago, she took Moc Nhien's design to compete. The design won first prize, and spent all week with money to play. At that time, she met Vong Hung. He was rich, prosperous, and took care of her. After a while, his company went bankrupt. His friends turned their backs. She heard that Thien Lanh's company was still developing normally, without any incidents. She ran away and tried to meet him. Now she will get everything back. Moc Van is very confident that Thien Lanh still loves her. Moc Nhien feels like she's really stupid. He hurt her like that these past few days, but she doesn't feel any hatred. She just feels very tired sometimes. These past 2 days she's been waiting for him to return, but now he's brought her sister home. Is she going to leave? But she didn't want to anymore. She didn't understand why she was like that. Didn't she initially want her sister to return soon so she could be freed? The butler walked over and gently rubbed her shoulder. "Don't worry, I'm always on your side. The young master will soon recognize her true face." Moc Nhien smiled. She went upstairs. By midnight, she still couldn't sleep, because the moans and gasps coming from the next room made it impossible for her to sleep. Sob. Sob. She hugged the blanket and sobbed. Why does she have feelings for him? He only hurt and humiliated her, so why did she fall in love with him? Seeing him happy with Moc Nhien doesn't hurt her as much as she does now. Next morning, Moc Nhien woke up, folded her clothes to leave. She carried her suitcase downstairs. At this time Thien Lanh and Deep Moc Van were having breakfast. "Where to go?" He looked at her, his thin lips slightly open. Moc Nhien lowered her head. "My sister has also returned. I can go now." "Moc Nhien, what are you saying? Don't leave. I ruined your family. I should leave." Thien Lanh grabbed her hand. "You don't have to go anywhere, and you don't want to leave either." "Why? Didn't you keep your word?" she asked. Thien Lanh only knew that he did not want this woman to leave. He pulled her hand. "Go to the room." Han Thien Lanh, what right do you have to force me? Han Thien Lanh pulled her up the stairs. Based on the fact that I bought you for 5,000. Her heart hurts so much, she's tired. Moc Van worriedly ran after him. Her eyes clearly only had sarcasm. Lan, don't do that. Moc Nhien will get hurt. Deep Moc Nhien, don't expect to be able to leave this place. From now on you have to stay here for me. Without my consent, you don't expect to be able to leave. Moc Nhien shook his hand away. Do you think I will let you be detained like that? You should remember, if I don't listen to Han Thien Lanh, I will only die. Moc Nhien closed her eyes. Then kill me. If you don't kill me, then let me go. I won't bother you guys anymore. It was very difficult to harm your sister to become Mrs. Han. So why did you give up so easily? Moc Nhien smiled. I suddenly realized that you are very poor, you are emotionally poor to the point of being pitiful. That's why I wanted to leave. He reached out and squeezed her neck. Deep Moc Nhien, don't ever say those words again, you will regret it. Lan, please let Moc Nhien go. Moc Van said. Han Thien Lanh shouted, get out. Moc Nhien, go out quickly, he already said it. Moc Van said. Han Thien Lanh squeezed her neck even tighter. I told you to get out. Moc Van was startled. Seeing him like that, she also panicked and went out, although she was a little resentful. 22. Cruel Moc Nhien had difficulty breathing but still did not resist him. She smiled. Do you know how pitiful you are? Han Thien Lanh pushed her onto the bed. Am I pitiful? Deep Moc Nhien, I will tell you, you are 1,000 times more pitiful than me. My sister has returned. What are you keeping me for? To humiliate me every day? Or let me fight over you and Deep Moc Van again? Han Thien Lanh laughed coldly. Do you think you can win me over with Moc Van? I also have no intention of fighting a pitiful person with a cruel person. Han Thien Lanh took off his vest. Okay. I will tell you who will be pitiful. Moc Nhien stepped back. What do you want to do? His eyes flashed with caution. You'll know soon enough. Han Thien Lanh said. He took off the tie around his neck, then grabbed her wrists, pulling Moc Nhien close to him. What do you want to do? Quickly let me go, she said. He tied her hands tightly with a tie, roar. Then he tore her dress off. Han Thien Lanh, why don't you let me go? Haven't you already brought my sister home? Han Thien Lanh took off his belt and said. If it weren't for a cruel person like you, we would have been happy together for a month now. If it weren't for you, she wouldn't have to suffer so far away. Strange. Now I will get justice for her. Chat. He swung his hand, whipping the leather belt hard on her body. Ah! Moc Nhien screamed in pain. Her hands were tied so tightly that she could only lie still and could not move. The place where his leg was hit left a red mark. Chat. Ah! Han Thien Lanh continued to slap her. Deep Moc Nhien, the most pitiful person right now is you. Chat. Ah! Moc Nhien frowned tightly. Her eyes became stubborn. He hit her but her wound did not hurt. The most painful place was her heart. Moc Nhien bit his lips tightly. Chat. Poor, pitiful? Every word he said was accompanied by a whip he slapped down on her. Until Moc Nhien could not bear it anymore. Her body was full of wounds. Blood had seeped into the bedsheet before he was gentle. The housekeeper only found the room key and was able to enter. Young master, stop, don't hit her anymore, she will really die. He waved his hand and pushed the housekeeper away. Don't worry about it. If you still want to continue working, please get out of here. But, young master, the lady is about to faint. Moc Nhien lay on the bed, weakly moving her lips. It's okay. Let him beat me to death, anyway. Death is better than being with him. Did you hear that? Get out. His eyes became colder and he shouted loudly. The housekeeper wiped her tears and felt sorry for Moc Nhien. She had no choice but to go out. He now took off all his clothes. Do you want to get rid of me to find another man? I will satisfy you, anyway. I will give you money every time. Moc Nhien smiled bitterly. Then you can pay the last 2 times later. You haven't paid the last time yet. His hand squeezed her neck tightly. You mean, okay. I'll pay, now serve well. He spread her legs and inserted his big thing directly into her clitoris, without any foreplay, causing her to feel pain underneath. Ah! Moc Nhien painfully closed her legs, but he insisted on keeping the same position. Outside, Moc Van nervously walked back and forth in front of the room door. She heard the noise inside and knew what they were doing. Deep Moc Nhien, don't try to steal him from me. What's wrong? How does it feel? Thien Lanh asked. Moc Nhien smiled coldly. I feel like you're with so many women that you're getting weaker and weaker. Your technique is getting worse. Her face was pale, her lips still left tooth marks. Thien Lanh was not angry because of her words. He smiled evilly and bent down to lick each of her wounds. Ah! Moc Nhien was in pain, trembling. The pain was combined with the fact that he was biting there. Thien Lanh turned her around, lifted her legs up high, making her butt appear in front of him. He stood up and entered her from behind. After nearly an hour, he let her go, growled softly and shot the liquid deep inside her. Moc Nhien was in so much pain that he fainted. He looked at her with disgust and took a birth control pill and put it in her mouth. Thien Lanh went in to take a shower and then went out. He took the chain from the closet and tied one of her hands. If she hadn't said he was pitiful just now, there wouldn't be such a result now. He neatly dressed and walked out with Moc Van. Lan. What took you so long? Moc Van's eyes sparkled with tears as she looked at Thien Lanh. He reached out to wipe her tears. Let's go, don't think too much. Yes. Moc Van obediently said. The Lamborghini car left, and the butler now dared to enter the room. Looking at the girl fainting on the bed, the pure white bedsheet covered in blood, the floor full of shredded clothes, she felt very sorry. Chapter 23, Guilty, Moc Nhien. Moc Nhien, are you okay? The housekeeper supported her, but there was nothing he could do, her hands were tied tightly by the chain. Moc Nhien heard her voice and opened her eyes slightly. Seeing her image was a bit blurry and then slowly sank into darkness. The housekeeper sent someone to change the bedsheet and then helped her lie down neatly on it. She wiped her body and then called the doctor. Her skin is naturally thin and injured from strong forces. It needs to be taken care of carefully, otherwise it will get infected. The housekeeper wiped her tears. Then please, doctor, help her clean her wound and prescribe medicine for her. The doctor nodded and helped her treat her body's injuries. The housekeeper sent someone out to buy medicine for her. Thien Lanh took Moc Van out to eat and then to the company. He was in a bad mood today, so no one dared to come. Even Moc Van didn't dare to say much. As for him, there was a bit of guilt in his heart. Not as faint as last time, but it was very clear. He was really worried about the woman in the other house. Moc Nhien slept for a while and woke up in the afternoon. The housekeeper brought her porridge. Moc Nhien, eat some porridge, then take medicine. The wound needs to be taken care of carefully or it will leave a scar. Moc Nhien looked at her and nodded. The housekeeper came closer to feed her porridge and then gave her medicine. Moc Nhien looked at her wrists tied by chains and her heart became even more bitter. After taking the medicine, she continued to sleep until evening. Thien Lanh and Moc Van returned to the villa, and he went up to the room to take a shower. Moc Van took the opportunity to talk to Moc Nhien. Moc Nhien, are you okay? Moc Nhien opened her eyes and smiled coldly. There's no one here. Stop acting. She smiled and slowly walked towards the bed. How pitiful. You ran out of money so you just came back? Moc Nhien asked. Moc Van shrugged. Someone else's is theirs. You can't take it no matter what. Quickly leave him. Moc Nhien smiled coldly. She was the one who wanted to leave now more than anyone else. There was no need for her to say anything. If you come in to talk about this, please go out, I want a rest. Moc Nhien said and closed her eyes. Moc Van clenched her fists. Deep Moc Nhien, don't dream of getting any money from him. Get away as quickly as possible. Mrs. Han is me, not you. Seeing Moc Nhien still silent, she got angry and went out. Moc Van walked downstairs. The rice was already served. She picked up a piece of meat. Fie, what is a hand? Can it be fed to someone? Who cooked this dish? Thien Lanh finished showering and went downstairs. He frowned. What's going on? Lan. This dish is so salty, clearly people cannot eat it, you should quickly chase everyone away. Thien Lanh looked at the housekeeper. The housekeeper responded to his gaze with cold eyes and turned away. He sat down and picked up the piece of meat. Don't worry anymore, this dish is clearly normal. Moc Van frowned and continued eating silently. Late at night, when he finished work, Moc Van lay in the room waiting for him. But he went into Moc Nhien's room. Having slept all day, Moc Nhien couldn't sleep. Seeing the noise, she immediately closed her eyes. He sat down next to her bed, wanting to reach out and rub her face, but his arm reached the air and stopped. He silently looked at her face. She is very thin, just a month has passed and she looks even paler and thinner. Her already slender body is now even slimmer. Moc Nhien suddenly opened her eyes and looked at him. Can you leave so I can sleep? Does it still hurt? He asked. Moc Nhien turned her head to the side. Thank you, you were so gentle at that time so now I feel very normal. He grabbed her chin and turned her face towards him. Don't be stubborn anymore. I said. Don't resist, otherwise the person who suffers the most will be me. She continued. Thien Lanh was silent. Moc Nhien said, can you untie me? I won't go anywhere. If you don't believe me then leave this place. Thien Lanh sighed and untied her. If you really leave, I will make you regret it forever. Moc Nhien rubbed her bruised wrist and said, go ahead. I want to rest. At this time, the housekeeper brought in the medicine. Young master. She didn't expect him to be here. He nodded and looked at the medicine bottles in her hand. Give them to me. This. She looked at him awkwardly. He took it, closed the door, walked to her bed, and pulled away the blanket that was covering her body. Don't cover yourself with blankets. Without air the wound will be more difficult to heal. Moc Nhien laughed coldly. Aren't you the one who caused them? I told you to go out and let me rest. Thien Lanh sat down and poured some medicine onto a cotton pad. He held her arm. Moc Nhien suddenly pulled her hand back but he held her firmly. He gently touched her wound. Moc Nhien frowned in pain. He found it a bit painful. He blew gently while applying medicine to her. Are you hitting and rubbing at the same time? Moc Nhien asked sarcastically. Thien Lanh remained silent. She withdrew her hand and moved to the side. Go ahead. Thien Lanh still stubbornly wanted to apply medicine for her. Moc Nhien was angry. Okay, if you don't go, I will go. She got out of bed, he hugged her and threw her onto the bed. Rest well. Chapter 24. Find you so for a whole week. Moc Nhien did not step out of the room, not even out of bed. The wound was treated well by the housekeeper, so only a faint mark remained. Applying it a few times will cure it. He hasn't bothered her all week. Frankly, they haven't seen each other for a whole week. Moc Van is always by his side. He basically has no time to talk to her. Today Moc Nhien brought pen and paper to the garden to draw. Moc Van was also at home today, only he went to the company. Tin Hong Group, on the top floor of the company, in the chairman's room. Thien Lanh sat around looking out the window. He always wondered why he no longer felt the same as before when he was with Moc Van. Your villa. Moc Nhien sat down at the lunch table. At this time Moc Van also came down. She still had that cold face. Moc Van said, "Can you still sit and eat? I told you to leave here quickly." Moc Nhien smiled. "I suddenly realized how comfortable it is to stay in this house." "Miss?" Moc Van said angrily and then withdrew her appearance. She didn't believe that she wouldn't be able to chase this deep Moc Nhien away. Moc Van picked up the piece of meat. When she was about to put it in her mouth, the smell of grease made her sick. "Are you cooking this dish for dogs to eat? The taste is so bad. Vomit," she said, then covered her mouth and ran to the bathroom. Moc Nhien looked at her. Her eyes were a bit curious. But then she ignored it, stood up, grabbed paper and pen, and went out to the garden. Moc Van sat in the bathroom and was worried. She had just returned. This pregnancy was definitely not Thien Lanh's, so this pregnancy belonged to that man. Then the person who dies will be you. Moc Van frowned for a moment, then suddenly her eyes lit up. There is a way. At night, Moc Nhien ate first and then went up to his room. He came home from work. Thien Lanh went up to his room. Moc Nhien saw him and came over. Knock, knock. She raised her hand to knock on the door. When Thien Lanh opened the door, she was a bit surprised because this was the first time after what happened last time that she came to see him. He looked at her, then turned and walked away. Moc Nhien also followed. He went into the bathroom. When she saw that, she stopped and he looked at her. "Come here and wash my back." Moc Nhien bit her lip and lowered her head. Thien Lanh saw her still standing there and said, "If not, get out, don't stand there blocking your view." She took a deep breath. After all, she had a new job and asked to meet him. Otherwise there would be no point in meeting him. She walked inside. He stood looking at her and then opened his arms. "Take off," I said. Moc Nhien walked towards him, her hands shaking slightly, slowly touching the tie. At this time, Deep Moc Van walked in. "Lan, let me help you." Thien Lanh looked at her. "Go out. Remember to lock the door." But her wound. Thien Lanh turned to look at her, his eyes softened. "I'll come find you later, go back to your room." Moc Van's eyes were not heartless. She looked at him and knew the way out. Moc Nhien unbuttoned his shirt, then the shirt fell to the floor, revealing half of his muscular body. Moc Nhien turned her face away, her hand touched down. Unfortunately, touching his manhood, it quickly hardened and grew larger. Her face was now as red as a gac fruit. His clothes were taken off. Thien Lanh leisurely sat in the bathtub. Moc Nhien took the towel and went to wash his back. He closed his eyes and opened his thin lips. "What's up?" Moc Nhien nodded and hesitantly said, "That. The thing is that I have drawn a product and want to meet Li Thien Vy too." "Impossible," he interrupted her. Moc Nhien bit her lip, knowing the outcome would be like that. He suddenly grabbed her wrist and pulled her forward. "Ah!" she suddenly shouted. Moc Nhien was soaked all over. She was lying in his lap. "Do you want to meet him that much?" He lifted her chin. Moc Nhien's eyes turned red. "No, I just want to find him to talk about the product." "Do I get anything?" he asked. Moc Nhien looked at him. His hand slid into her wet shirt. "If you perform well tonight, you can go tomorrow." Moc Nhien bit her lip, proactively wrapped her arms around his neck. Her soft lips pressed against his lips, her tongue gently parted his teeth. Thien Lanh gently rubbed her table. His eyes were satisfied with the kiss, then she gently kissed his neck. He reached out and took off all the clothes on her body. At this moment, the two naked bodies in the bathtub looked very arousing. He bent his head down and kissed her neck. Quickly her white neck was full of red kiss marks. Moc Nhien couldn't help but moan softly. His hand reached down to her cave, following the water flow, inserting a finger. Ah! She arched her body up to follow his attack. His fingers began to move in and out of her more forcefully. Moc Nhien hugged his neck, their bodies pressed together. Painful. Ah. Lightly. Lightly. Don't. Stop. Stop. She shook her head vigorously. Thien Lanh couldn't take it anymore. He lifted her waist up, placed his little brother in front of her vagina and slowly entered. Ah! Her hand gently placed nearby to block his attack. Thien Lanh was still going in and out of her like a storm. The water in the bathtub splashed out. Moc Nhien clung tightly to the edge of the tub. He carried her out of the bathtub and walked towards the big bed. He lifted her legs up. The red cave appeared before his eyes. He gasped and bent down to lick it. Ah! Moc Nhien didn't expect him to do that, she gasped. He lightly licked there and then let go. His little brother entered again. Ah! She moaned, her body moving up and down from his attack. Finally, when it was almost dawn, he let her go and put the liquid inside her. He walked into the bathroom, took a quick shower and then walked towards the cabinet. Thien Lanh picked up the bottle of birth control pills and looked at her and then looked at the bottle of pills. In the end, he put them back in the closet. Chapter 25. Proposal. The next morning, Moc Nhien woke up, her whole body aching. She went to the bathroom to wash herself and then went back to her room to change clothes. Moc Nhien went downstairs. Moc Nhien, come down and have breakfast. The butler called her. Moc Van and he were also there. She went down and sat in the chair opposite him. After breakfast, come with me. I've already made an appointment with Thien Vy. Let's meet at my company. Moc Nhien nodded. Okay. Moc Van next to her glared at her. Lan. I also want to come with you. You should stay home, wait for your health to recover. Moc Van frowned, her eyes were clearly not resigned. She was clearly normal. But because she lied to him last time, he still believed her. It's so infuriating. Moc Nhien took her design and went to the car with him. He and she sat in the back seat. In front was his family's private driver. After meeting, remember to stay and wait for me to return. Moc Nhien looked at him. Are you going home this afternoon? Did you expect that? He asked. Moc Nhien didn't know how to answer. She opened the design and looked at it again. Thien Hong Group, the Lamborghini stopped. A security guard opened the door for him and then turned around to open the door for her. Moc Nhien followed him into the room. Thien Vy was there waiting for her and him to arrive. Moc Nhien entered. Hello. Thien Vy stood up. Mr. Han, Mrs. Han. He didn't say anything else. At this time Secretary Hoang came in. Mr. Han, it's time for the meeting. Let's go. Thien Lanh nodded and went out. When he was about to step out the door, he stopped. Remember to wait for me, don't leave first. After saying that, he turned and walked away. Thien Vy smiled. It seems that the relationship between Mr. Han and Mrs. Han is very good. Moc Nhien smiled bitterly. She was not Mrs. Han. This label belonged to her sister. As a woman, having sad eyes will be very miserable. Thien Vy looked into her eyes and said. Moc Nhien lowered her eyes. You saw wrong. I'm not mistaken, I just said it jokingly. From the beginning I realized that your relationship was not good. Moc Nhien raised her head and looked at him in surprise. You? Actually, I also had feelings for you from the first time. So I easily agreed to cooperate with you. Thien Vy said. Moc Nhien was surprised and didn't know what else to say. Thien Vy smiled. Don't look at me like that. Are you suspecting me of lying? Moc Nhien shook her head vigorously, then nodded again. Finally, she lowered her head and bit her lip. Thien Vy smiled. Okay. Now you just need to tell me whether you have any feelings for me or not. Moc Nhien still lowered his head, the smile on his lips faded even more. Do you love Thien Lanh? Moc Nhien lowered her eyes. Love was there. She didn't know when she loved him, nor did she understand why she loved him. General Lee, this is my first design. Please take a look. Moc Nhien had no choice but to talk about work. She gave him the manuscript. Lee Thien Vy took it and put them on the table. Moc Nhien, I want to tell you something. Just say it. Moc Nhien replied. Lee Thien Vy nodded. In a month, there will be a French company opening a training class for those pursuing this field. My company has nominated up to 2 people. I want one of them to be you. Moc Nhien said. Lee Thien Vy nodded. Yes, this opportunity will be very rare. You only need to go for 3 years. You will get a diploma in France. Besides, you can develop your career as you want. Moc Nhien heard that and wanted to go, but would he let her go for 3 years? If you're not happy with him, why are you staying? Lee Thien Vy asked. She was silent. I'm a bit sad. Okay, I will send your design back to the company to follow and launch on the market. As for going to France, you have a month to think about it. I hope you will make the right decision. Moc Nhien raised her head. Are you really that good to me? No, this is not because I am good to you, but because I see that you have real ability. This will have nothing to do with my feelings for you. After saying that, he stood up and walked out. Moc Nhien looked at the closed door and felt a bit confused. Are what he said true? But how should she ask Thien Lanh? Thien Lanh's villa. Moc Van was bored sitting in the living room watching TV. She looked at her nails and then picked up fruit to eat. Tit. It was her phone. She frowned and picked up the phone. It was Vong Hung. A look of fear appeared on her face. Hello. Her voice was a bit shaky. On the other side, Vong Hung bared his teeth. Damn it, do you dare to run away from me? Seeing that your grandfather ran out of money, did you leave like that? Moc Van went out into the garden to talk. What do you want? Vong Hung smiled. Honey, you're the one who understands best what I want. Give me the address, let's meet and talk. Tin Hong Group. Moc Nhien sat thinking all day, then Thien Lanh came in. Let's go home. She nodded, then stood up and followed him down to the basement to get the car. Returning to the villa, she went to her room to change clothes and then went downstairs to eat. He came down. Where is Moc Van? The housekeeper said. Someone called this morning. Miss Deep went out early. He frowned and walked towards the dining table with her. He didn't go to work this afternoon to deal with something. You have to tell her about Li Huyen do last time. Chapter 26. Revenge. He looked at Moc Nhien, his thin lips slightly opened. What are you planning to do this afternoon? I'm at the designer. Moc Nhien raised her head to answer. He said, come with me this afternoon. Where are you going? You're not going with Ms. Moc Van. Seeing his eyes, the words were stopped. She nodded. I know. Thien Lanh stood up. I bought you back. You have no right to refuse what I ask. Then he left and went upstairs. The housekeeper walked up to her. Seeing her sadness, she said, Moc Nhien, how are you going to see the director over there this morning? Moc Nhien smiled. He said he would bring my design back and let someone make it to bring to the market. That's great, the butler said. Moc Nhien smiled. She continued to eat. In the afternoon, after the Lamborghini left the villa, another car parked there. Deep Moc Van got out, her clothes and hair a bit more disheveled than when she left. Miss Deep, you're back. A gardener nearby greeted her and said, Miss, your clothes are a bit wrinkled and your face doesn't look very good. She raised her hand to adjust her skirt and touched her face. Can you manage it? I'll fire you now. After that, she left inside. The person who did this all avoided her, partly because she was too lazy to say hello, partly because she was afraid that she would go crazy. At your organization, Li Huyen was captured here. Inside there was also black-white lamb waiting for him. The person who captured it for you. Deal with it. Black-white lamb said. Moc Nhien looked at the woman lying on the ground and was surprised. She is Thien V's sister? Thien Lanh looked at her and nodded. It's her. Moc Nhien grabbed his sleeve. What do you want to do? Bok Lam looked at her and smiled. Moc Nhien, do you remember how I brought him home last night? Moc Nhien nodded. He continued. How was that night? Are you very tired? Moc Nhien looked down. Her cheeks turned red. Do it, Thien Lanh said. One of his subordinates came to pour a mug of water. Li Huyandu slowly opened his eyes. The story is that just now she was shopping when suddenly strangers took her here. Who are you? Li Huyandu said. Thien Lanh returned to his chair to sit. Moc Nhien followed him. Do you remember me, Miss Li? Li Huyandu looked at him in surprise. Mr. Thien Lanh smiled coldly. You should have paid back both the capital and what happened the other day. He nodded and then a subordinate walked towards her, holding a bottle of white medicine in his hand. What are you going to do? No. Let me go. I'm wrong. Don't. She struggled frantically. Bok Lam said. Be careful of hurting your baby. Later. People won't need it. Thien Lanh turned to look at him. Sorry? No problem. Bok Lam said and then gave Moc Nhien an apple. Moc Nhien, eat it. Sit down here. Don't stand anymore. Moc Nhien sat down next to him. The medicine bottle was poured into Li Huyandu's mouth. Her body started to heat up. Her body turned red. She moaned absent-mindedly. A great desire surged. Moc Nhien looked at her with some pity. His people brought in a Brazilian Mastiff, which looked very ferocious. Woof, woof, woof. The barking scared the listener. Miss Li, do you need to relieve your desires? Thien Lanh asked. Li Huyandu looked at the dog. She shook her head. Please, I was wrong. Don't. Moc Nhien looked at him. Can you forgive her? Moc Nhien, don't you know that if he has a grudge, he must take revenge, and if he has a favor, he must return the favor? Black-white lamb reminded her. Thien Lanh asked her again, so what will I get? Moc Nhien bit her lip. I don't know. Thien Lanh leaned close to her ear. I don't mind if you have fun with me tonight. Moc Nhien looked at him. After all, this body was already his, so would one more time make any difference? She bit her lip, her head slightly nodding. He smiled with satisfaction. Let her go. Bok Lam asked in surprise. Did you really forgive her? Thien Lanh said. Do you find it strange? If you want, you can help her relax a bit. Forget it. I can't get hard looking at her, but I'm there to relieve myself. Then he stood up. Moc Nhien, let's go. Moc Nhien smiled and nodded. Thien Lanh stood up and walked out. He sat in the driver's seat, and she sat next to him. After walking a while, he felt the car make a strange noise. Tits, tits, tits. Like the sound of a bomb about to explode. He frowned and drove to a deserted place, surrounded by trees. Creak, because of the sudden braking. Moc Nhien almost hit her head forward, but fortunately he was able to catch her. Get off, I said. Moc Nhien looked at him confused, but unfastened her seatbelt and got out of the car. He also stepped down. Stay away. Moc Nhien ran to the other side of the tree and sat down. Thien Lanh walked around the car. Tick, tit, tits. The sound became clearer and clearer. He lowered his head towards the front wheel. His eyes narrowed. There was a bomb there, only 10 seconds away from exploding. After all, who dares to do such a thing? He smiled coldly. Do you even want to play this childish game with me? He took off his suit jacket, then rolled up his sleeves. Thien Lanh lay down under the car and looked up. His hand touched a red rope. Tit. That bomb stopped ringing. It was easily destroyed by him. He took it off and threw it aside. Tits. 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 He frowned. It was obvious that it had been removed. Why could he still hear the sound? He opened the car's front cover. Head down. He turned to shout loudly at Moc Nhien and then ran away. Damn it, there wasn't just one bomb inside, but 4. With only 10 seconds left, he simply couldn't destroy them all. He ran a short distance, then lay down on the ground, holding his head. Boom! The car exploded, then immediately it caught fire. Moc Nhien ran towards him. Are you okay? Thien Lanh sat up, frowning and looking at the burning car. We finally waited for today. Thien Lanh, blood debts must be paid with blood. Chapter 27. Danger. He stood up and looked at them. It turned out they were the people of the 2 old men he killed last time in America. Thien Lanh pulled Moc Nhien's hand behind his back. Just for a few people, do you want me to pay with blood? Then let's settle it today. Thien Lanh said. A person holding a shiny 50-centimeter knife ran towards him. Ah! He raised his foot and kicked him in the stomach, then broke his wrist. The knife fell to the ground making an ear-splitting noise. He punched him hard in the face. Then kicked him hard in the stomach again. That guy backed away and fell to the ground. Seeing that, several people immediately gathered and rushed towards him. Moc Nhien looked at him and said, "Be careful." He looked at her then turned to them. The 2 men stepped forward and kicked him. He backed away for a moment, then stood firm again. He braced himself and grabbed the wrists of the other 2 men. Crack! The sound of their bones making a sound. He kicked one of the guys with 1 foot and he stepped back. One leader pulled out a handgun, then his subordinates pulled out 2. You're so fast, you're so skilled, but you can't beat my gun. Thien Lanh pushed Moc Nhien back. Hide carefully. Don't let them catch you. Moc Nhien looked at him worriedly. Can you beat them all? He looked at her then pulled out the gun from behind his back. Give you a few more minutes to look at the sun longer. Saying that, he pulled the trigger. Dong. The bullet went straight into the middle of a subordinate's forehead. Dang! The leader shot at him. Thien Lanh dodged to the left and shot at another guy. Dang! A bullet flew towards the other guy, but the other guy also dodged the bullet. A guy ran up and kicked him in the leg. Thien Lanh looked at him coldly. He tickled his stomach and his gun fell to the ground. He aimed right at him. Dang! After a while of fierce fighting, the other side suffered quite a lot of losses. Only 3 people remained. But his strength was also exhausted. The leader kicked him hard in the back. Suddenly he knelt to the ground. Moc Nhien was worried. She had no other choice but to call the police department. Thien Lanh stood up with both hands and pointed his gun at a subordinate. Trigger hand. Silent. He looked at the gun barrel. Frowning. Damn, the gun is out of bullets. Ha ha. Thien Lanh, God really helped us. The big brother said. Thien Lanh threw the gun aside. He turned around and kicked the big brother. Phew. He spit out some blood. Next, he rushed to attack the other 2 subordinates, not paying attention to the big brother for a moment. Careful. Moc Nhien ran out and hugged him then turned around. Dang! Ah! Moc Nhien cried out softly. Thien Lanh supported her. The blood behind his shoulder stained his sleeve. He looked at him with dead eyes. At this time the police car arrived. The big brother saw this and aimed the gun at him again. Dang! But before he could, the police took action. The other guy rolled his eyes and fainted to the ground. Thien Lanh picked her up and said, "Quickly call an ambulance." Moc Nhien grabbed his collar, her eyes dreamily looking at him from below. This look was clearly worried about her, but she must have seen it wrong. A tear fell from the corner of her eye. This was the first time he cared for her, so happy. Even though the wound was painful, her heart felt warm, warm like she had never experienced before. Moc Nhien was taken to the hospital. In the emergency room, doctors focused on treating her injuries. When the bullet was finally removed, she was still unconscious. The emergency lights turned off, she was pushed out. Thien Lanh and Hac Lam walked towards the doctor. "How is she?" he asked. The doctor said, "The bullet has been removed, but the bullet is in the right shoulder. Later, the arm will be affected and may lose feeling." "You mean she won't be able to use her right arm like before?" White Lam asked. The doctor shook his head. "Not really. If she is treated well, she will be fine in the future. She just won't be able to do heavy and long-term work with her right hand." The doctor left, feeling a bit dazed. The woman he hated risked her life to save him. She liked designing the most, so what would happen next? After waking up, will she be able to withstand this attack? He is really worried about her. Hac Lam patted his shoulder. "Okay. Go visit her quickly." He looked at him then turned and left. White Lam looked at his subordinates. "Okay, go home." "Yes," they shouted in unison. Thien Lanh walked into her room. Looked at her arm lying on the bed, he suddenly went to gently touch the back of her hand. "Lan, how is Moc Nhien? What's wrong with her? Hoo-hoo, why is she like this?" At this time, Moc Van came in, crying for a long time. Thien Lanh raised his head to look at her. "She's okay, go home and rest." "How do you rest? Moc Nhien is like that. I'm your sister, tell me how can I be normal?" "Hoo-hoo," Thien Lanh frowned. "Crying can't solve it, go home quickly." Moc Van clenched her fists, her eyes were cruel, she turned and walked out. "Tips, tits, tits. It's her phone." Moc Van was annoyed and took out her phone. "What's going on? Baby, send me some money to spend." Vong Hung said. She frowned. "Is all the money I sent the other day? There are 200,000, tell me how to spend it." She frowned. "So how much do you want?" 5,000,000. She said angrily. "Go and die." 5,000,000? Where did she get such a large amount of money? Now Thien Lanh doesn't treat her like before, how could she get such a large amount of money? Her eyes suddenly flashed with cruelty. After all, he was now empty-handed and had no more subordinates, so she would eliminate him. Chapter 28. Elimination. The next day, Moc Nhien woke up after the anesthesia wore off. She slowly opened her eyes and looked at the white ceiling. This is not his villa. She feels her body aches so much. Moc Nhien propped herself up and sat up, but her hands no longer felt anything and she couldn't even stand up. Moc Nhien looked at her right arm. Her eyebrows slightly frowning. What's going on? Why does she feel that this arm is very weak? She can't feel anything anymore. Are you awake? At this time, Thien Lanh came in, saw her, and asked softly. Moc Nhien looked at her hand. My hand? He put down the bag of fruit. Wait for the doctor to check you out. The doctor came in, put a listening device on her heart and did some other tests. Girl, please calm down, your arm is gradually weakening because of the shoulder injury. Moc Nhien covered her mouth with her hand. She was so surprised. She was only 20 years old, her career was just developing, how could this happen? But don't worry too much, just get good treatment. She looked at him. I want to be alone. Thien Lanh looked at her, his eyes a bit complicated. Go out, he told the other doctor. He nodded and walked out, I followed. As he closed the door, his eyes stopped at the small figure sitting on the bed for a few seconds and then walked out. Moc Nhien got out of bed, walked towards the window, she looked at the scenery outside. What am I going to do? How to accept this? When Thien Lanh returned to his company, she was far different from what he imagined. When she found out that her arm no longer had feeling, she didn't cry like everyone else. She was silent, alone all day, doing nothing, just standing around looking at the scene outside. Hospital. Knock. 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 She was standing when there was a knock on the door outside. Moc Nhien walked towards that direction. The door opened. Thien Lanh was standing there holding a bouquet of flowers. Moc Nhien, how is your body? Are you feeling better? Moc Nhien smiled. I'm better. Thank you. I heard you took a bullet for Thien Lanh, so you came in here? He asks. Moc Nhien bit her lip. She stepped aside. Come in. Thien Lanh smiled. She was avoiding his question. Moc Nhien, what do you think about going to France? Moc Nhien sat down on the chair. I'm not going. Now my arm. Are you going to give up your dream forever? Moc Nhien smiled bitterly. If it's not like that, what should I do? Moc Nhien, did you volunteer to take this bullet yesterday? Moc Nhien nodded. Yes. Okay, I know. Are you not going to France partly because of Thien Lanh? Moc Nhien shook her head. I don't know. Thien Lanh was a bit disappointed. He said, I will wait for you to think again. Moc Nhien, don't give up your passion. You still have your left arm. Thank you. Moc Nhien said. Deep family. Mrs. Deep held Deep Moc Van's hand. Daughter, where did you go and you're just now coming back to me? I miss you so much. Deep Moc Van smiled. I was just traveling. Aren't I back now? Yes. Mother Deep said. And how are Thien Lanh and you? Father Deep said. Our company is having difficulties and needs capital to manage it. You should see what you can do. She nodded. I know. Just like that, 3 weeks have passed since Moc Nhien was in the hospital. Today is the day she was discharged from the hospital. The housekeeper came to help her pack her things. Uncle, where is he? The butler said. The young master has gone on a business trip and will not be back in 2 days. Moc Nhien nodded. Yes. During her stay in the hospital, he visited her 3 times, on weekends. They didn't talk, he just sat there silently, and she sat on the bed practicing drawing with her left hand. Moc Nhien smiled bitterly. She thought that after this time, their relationship would be different, but who would have thought it would still be the same? He is still himself, cold, heartless. Hating her to the bone. Thien Lanh sat on the plane, his mind always focused on her. He suddenly discovered that he had feelings for that woman, so he didn't dare see her often. But he was afraid. Afraid that one day she would betray him. And as for Moc Van, she was the girl who helped him overcome his emotions that year. He couldn't let her bear the resentment. In a small alley of the slums, Vong Hung wore a long coat, its hood covering half of his face. He called Deep Moc Van. Baby, why hasn't the money arrived for so long? At this time, a group of people dressed in unusual clothes came to block his way. Boy, do you want to extort money from someone? Vong Hung stepped back. What do you want? I want to beat you to death. The other guy said, and then everyone rushed to beat him. A group of people punched Vong Hung, causing him to lie down on the ground and endure the beating. A moment later, his whole body was covered in blood. He had no other choice but to pretend to be dead. One guy waved his hand to signal everyone to stop. He raised his hand to touch his nose and neck. Dead. Then another guy took out his phone. Miss Van, you've finished handling it. Let's go. The whole group left. Vong Hung clenched his fists. Vile woman, don't blame me. Chapter 29. Moc Nhien is pregnant. Moc Nhien went into the house. Moc Van just woke up. She came out of Thien Lanh's room. Why don't you go home? Why don't you just go? Moc Nhien looked at her, said nothing and went back to her room. Stop. Deep Moc Van shouted. Deep Moc Nhien, don't think that by saving him once, he will keep an eye on you. Moc Nhien smiled faintly. If I don't help him, his eyes will still be on me. Then she entered the room. Deep Moc Van angrily stomped her feet and clenched her fists. The next day, Moc Nhien and Deep Moc Van went downstairs to have breakfast. Go. When she smelled the grease, she immediately ran to the bathroom and vomited. Moc Nhien looked at the housekeeper. What's wrong with her? She shook her head. She continued eating. Moc Van sat in the bathroom. She frowned. What should I do? Recently Thien Lanh hasn't touched her. How can he say that this pregnancy is his? Suddenly she remembered that when she first came back, he and she also had sex once, and this pregnancy was a month old. What a coincidence. So good. Tits. At this moment, her phone vibrated. Moc Van opened it to see a message. The content inside was that she and Vong Hong were rolling around in bed. Her hands were shaking. She called this number again. Hello, who are you? Why is there this clip? Vong Hong gritted his teeth. Damn it, I won't forgive you. You. She was surprised. Wasn't he already dead? Surprised because I'm not dead yet? He continued. You kind of whore, quickly bring me the money. If you don't see it tomorrow, don't blame me. Moc Van panicked. What to do now? Moc Nhien went out to the garden. The housekeeper came to her. Moc Nhien, Mr. Lee came to find me. Moc Nhien stood up. Yes. Moc Nhien, how are you? Moc Nhien smiled. Thank you, I'm okay now. Lee Thien Vy put a phone on the table. He pushed it towards her. Moc Nhien, I'm about to go to France. Have you decided yet? She hesitated. In fact, since she was in the hospital, she had never thought about this. Lee Thien Vy said, there are 2 more days, you can call me at any time. Moc Nhien nodded. I know. At night, at the villa, everything was silent. Moc Van wore a white nightgown and tiptoed into his study. She didn't dare turn on the light because she was afraid people would find out, and most importantly, she was afraid the camera would show her. She went to the cabinet and rummaged through the papers inside. She flipped out some papers, like contracts, looked through them, then folded them and put them back in their original place. After searching for a while, she frowned and found nothing but a few documents. She walked to the safe, her eyes shining. But how could she know what the password is? It's definitely not her birthday. It was his mother's birthday. How could she know? My father's birthday. Your birthday. She either doesn't remember the relevant numbers or is incorrect. Moc Van frowned, or she entered the series of numbers. As she thought, the password was the day his parents died. Clack, the sound of the door opening. There was a lot of money inside, and there were also bank cards. She took 4 wads of money and 3 bank cards. It's unexpected that he left so much cash in the house. Next morning, Moc Van went out early. Moc Nhien went downstairs to have breakfast. Moc Nhien, yesterday you said you wanted to eat something a little sour, but I was afraid you would have a stomachache, so I bought some mangoes. After breakfast, eat. Moc Nhien nodded. Yes. Thank you. She sat down at the dining table. The morning was nothing fancy and had a lot of substance, but it made her feel sick. Her stomach churning, she picked up some eggs. Uncle, do these eggs have too much oil? The butler said. Is that so? Let me send someone to prepare something else. She shook her head. No need. The housekeeper went into the kitchen. She looked at the egg. Ugh. Moc Nhien hugged her stomach and ran to the bathroom. What's wrong with you? Very similar to Moc Van's expression. Moc Nhien frowned. Could it be? She went upstairs, put on her coat, then took her bag and went downstairs. Uncle, I'm going out for a moment. The butler ran after him and said, go home early. She took a taxi to the hospital, bought the ticket, and then sat down to wait. Number 35, it's your turn. A nurse said. She quickly stood up and followed inside. Moc Nhien was examined a series of times. After a few hours of waiting, she took the results and walked out of the hospital. The doctor's words always echoed in my head. Congratulations, miss. You are pregnant. The fetus is 1 month old. But the health of the fetus is not very good. She touched her belly. She was pregnant. It was his child. But will he accept it? He loves her sister so much. How can he let this child be born? What am I going to do? Now her heart is in turmoil. Chapter 30. Misunderstanding. Moc Nhien sat in front of the hospital gate for a while, thinking about what to do. After a while she decided to go back inside. She only has this choice. This child will have to suffer with her when she is born. She can't, not to mention he doesn't love her at all. Keeping this pregnancy, she knows what to do. She sat in a row of chairs waiting for her turn. This place was dark, cold, full of death, and she felt so scared. In just a moment this child will come out of her belly, no longer in here. Impossible. This is her child. How can she treat him like that? She hugged her stomach and ran out of the hospital. She would keep this baby wherever she went. At night, the Lamborghini car stopped in front of the villa gate. Thien Lanh walked in with a black suit, a tired look on his face. Moc Van came out and hugged his arm. Lan, will you miss me when I'm gone for 2 days? Thien Lanh gently touched her hair and said softly, yes, I miss you very much. Have you had dinner yet? Moc Van nodded. I've eaten. Let's go home. Thien Lanh said. Moc Van followed him into the house. He looked around and couldn't see Moc Nhien. She was probably in her room. Moc Van saw that he was looking for her and immediately said angrily, Lan, I miss you very much. Let's go to our room and go to sleep. Or do you want to stay with Moc Nhien today? Thien Lanh smiled. Okay, let's go to the bedroom. Moc Van went up to rinse him with warm water. He took off his vest and she walked over. Let me wash your back. No need, I can do it myself. You go out, I'll go into the study later to finish my work and then we'll go to sleep. Even though she was reluctant, she still had to say yes. Thien Lanh lay in the bathtub for a while and then went out. He put on a set of clothes at home, loose and comfortable but still not losing his attractive appearance. He went into the study room. Moc Van in the room laughed coldly. She called. Quickly send it, she said, her eyes flashing cruelly. Moc Nhien. This time you better go as far away as possible and never come back again. Thien Lanh flipped the document over. His eyes looked a bit strange, his bushy eyebrows frowned slightly. Why is their order mixed up? Who dares to touch your things? His phone vibrated with a message. He thought it was a message from the internet so he didn't pay attention to it. He continued working, rearranging documents. Another message. He finally put down the documents and picked up the phone. His eyes flashed a strange light. The content inside is 2 pictures sent at the same time and followed by a text message. The 2 pictures are Moc Van or Moc Nhien lying under the body of the CEO of GL Group. He has a big belly, ugly and eyes full of lust. He frowned. Is this Moc Van or Moc Nhien? He opened another message to see. Thien Lanh, you won't believe that the woman Moc Nhien betrayed you. He held the phone tightly, his breath cold. Another message was sent. The contract between your company and that old man's company has been sold by Moc Nhien. He slammed down on the table, his eyes were cold. So his documents were messed up because Moc Nhien touched them? It was in vain that he fell in love with her again. Thien Lanh walked towards the safe. He entered the password and looked for that contract. It's really gone. Moc Nhien. He gritted his teeth and called out her name. In the room, Moc Nhien is holding the results. She is wondering whether she should go and tell him. Bang! The door was kicked open with a cold kick. Moc Nhien was startled and put the paper down on the pillow. Are you back? Thien Lanh angrily walked towards her. He squeezed her neck. Moc Nhien. You dare betray me? I. Cough. She said with difficulty. He gritted his teeth and said, you dare to sell my important contract. He doesn't consider how much money he's lost to be a big deal. What's important to him is the reputation of the company that he's been trying to preserve and promote for so many years. I don't know. Please let me go. He said. Say, besides me and him. Who have you slept with? Moc Nhien shook her head. I don't understand what you are saying. Deep Moc Nhien, you really deserve to die. First you stole your sister's husband. Now you sleep with another man, then you stole my money and contract. Moc Nhien really didn't understand why he was so angry with her. She had difficulty breathing. I'm having trouble breathing. Let go. Let go. He pushed her towards the bed. Moc Nhien suddenly lay down, her body lifted and landed several times. She followed her mother's instincts and hugged her belly. Good child, don't be afraid, I will protect you. I can't satisfy you? Or is it because the money I gave you wasn't enough that made you go find another guy and betray me? Moc Nhien shook her head. I really didn't do anything. Stop acting. He grabbed her collar. Deep Moc Nhien, I really hate you to death. Pop, he slapped her hard in the face. Moc Nhien almost fainted. The force of this slap was not light. There was a red line of blood at the corner of her mouth. Say, how much did you end up selling that contract for? She burst into tears. I really didn't do what you said. How can I answer? He pulled her down from the bed. You make me so disgusting. Get out of here. Moc Nhien had difficulty following him. One cheek was swollen. He was so angry right now that he lost his wits. At the end of chapter 30, I hope you enjoy listening to the story and relax. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment below to support the MC. See you soon.